Okay, we are rolling. Overview of the Bible, Isaiah.
Okay, we left off with Isaiah chapter 6, and I want to get into that in more detail. And we left off with in the year that King Uzziah died, Isaiah has this vision of the Lord in his throne room. And so verse 2, it says his robe fills the temple in verse 1. In verse 2 it says, Seraphim stood above him, each having 6 wings. And we talk about seraphim, as sometimes angels, but, there's all these different heavenly creatures with different names. Seraphim have 6 wings, Okay, that's a strange, and I don't know of anyone that's seen anything with 6 wings. But anyway, seraphim have 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face, with 2 he covered his feet, and with 2 he flew. And one called out to another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. So they're just in the throne room, these seraphim, and they're just yelling back to each other, Holy, holy, holy. They're just in awe of the Lord's majesty. Verse 4, And the foundations of the threshold trembled at the voice of him who called out while the temple was filling with smoke. Verse 5, Then I said, Woe is me, for I am ruined, because I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips, for my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. So when he sees the Lord, there's such a contrast he feels between himself and the Lord and the people he's with and the Lord. He's just like, I'm ruined, I'm undone, it says in King James Version, I think. And, he's just like, it's over, man, it's over. I can't stand in the presence of this glory. And the seraphim are yelling back and forth, Holy, 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 and the place is shaking. Verse 6, Then one of the seraphim flew to me with a burning coal in his hand, which he had taken from the altar with tongs. And verse 7, And he touched my mouth with it and said, Behold, this has touched your lips, and your iniquity is taken away, and your sin is forgiven. Interesting that Isaiah had cried out that his lips, is what he noticed, were unclean. I mean, you don't talk right, you can see it in the Lord's presence. I'm sure you'd really realize really stupid things you're saying. And so he realized his mouth wasn't right, and he's not just my mouth; it's those people I'm with too. They're like that too. I'm among a people like this, and so the seraphim takes and grabs a coal from the altar and touches his lips and says, "Your iniquity is taken away; you're forgiven." And then verse 8, interesting verse here. It says, "And I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send, and who will go for us? And then I said, Here am I; send me." Well, Isaiah was so overwhelmed, he didn't even ask where he's going. He doesn't know what he's going to do. He was just so overwhelmed by the Lord's presence. He says, I'll go, send me. What can you do when you really... So I really feel like if we really get a vision of the Lord, we'll just do whatever he wants. We don't even have to know what it is. That's an interesting place to be. I don't know how I've experienced that really to any great degree. I remember when we first, my wife and I first left for Morocco to visit Tangier, to fill in for 3 months for a pastor there. So the only thing we went on was when I read that they needed somebody, something jumped inside of me, something leaped in my heart is all I could say, and I thought, well, let's go. And I asked her, and she said, I'm all in. So we really didn't know where we were going. Our experience in the past had been we'd visited Kenya, and a lot of our close friends live in mud houses. So I don't know, this is Africa. I didn't really know much about Morocco. I thought, well, maybe we're going to go live in a mud house. But it didn't matter. It was just like something was drawing us. The Lord had jumped in my heart, and Anita just agreed. So, I think when we see the Lord, our job would really be drawn near to him. And if we do, you know what? We're going to respond to anything he wants us to do. Here Isaiah says, I'll go, send me. You know who he went to? A people that would keep on listening and not perceive, a people that would keep on looking and not understand. He went to people that weren't going to obey or follow his message at all. What a frustration. But I think the only thing that can really get you there would be the start that the Lord has really called you, the Lord has really sent you. You have his favor on your life, so you can even go to the situation. You're not looking at the results, because Isaiah's results weren't very good. We look at him now, what a powerful prophet, what amazing words he had. But at the time he goes to this people, they don't even listen to him. In fact, from our understanding is Isaiah was probably, the tradition says he was executed by King Manasseh. And maybe he might be among those listed in the the hall of faith in Hebrews 11, some of those that died for their faith, it says some were sawn asunder. They were cut in two, like with a wooden saw. And some relate maybe Isaiah went through that. So his message at the time was really not received very well. It's really hard to imagine that because his prophecies are so incredible. In fact, in chapter 7 and verse 14 is one that we quote all the time in the New Testament. Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, a virgin will be with child and bear a son, and she will call his name Emmanuel. Here's a prophecy that we use regarding Jesus as the Messiah. A virgin will give birth to a son who we will call God with us, Emmanuel. And we see Isaiah with these incredible prophecies, but he wasn't even accepted. He wasn't even received at his time. It's like, I don't know if they called him a prophet or just that crazy man or a guy you don't want to listen to because he's going to tell you you've done evil things. He's on your case. Don't go to him. He's mean. That guy's mean. He's speaking. He says mean things to us. It offends me. We're in a generation that if you get offended, that's like the worst thing. If somebody offends you, they're the worst kind of people. I think we need to read the Bible and really watch that for ourselves, because here we see what Isaiah said. I noticed Jesus, when he's speaking at one point in the Sermon on the Mount, says, "You being evil." I think about that. I think, well, probably in this generation, people would come to Jesus and say, "Jesus, that's not very Christ-like. You need to be more Christ-like, Jesus, in the way you talk, because you call people evil, and that's not nice. That's offending. That's offending us, Jesus." So we need to watch. If the Lord says you're evil, you know what? You're evil. Just because he's got a way to get you out of evil to be righteous and pure and holy and just. That's the good news, that he will do that for us. But it starts with the recognition of, what he said about the evil thing? That's true. That's where we're at. So we see that prophecy in Isaiah 7:14 about Emmanuel. He does in chapter 8 prophesy about the fall of the 10 northern tribes, what we call Israel. When Israel was divided into two nations, Israel was the designation for the 10 northern tribes and Judah for the 2 southern tribes. And here in Isaiah chapter 8, he prophesies about the fall of Israel. In chapter 9, incredible prophecies here, once again. Verse 2, the people who walk in darkness. In fact, this even says, it mentions Galilee of the Gentiles or of the nations on the other side of the Jordan. And then it talks about the people who walk in darkness will see a great light. Those who live in a dark land, the light will shine on them. Thou shalt multiply the nation. Thou shalt increase their gladness. They will be glad in thy presence, as with the gladness of harvest, as men rejoice when they divide the spoil. And thou shalt break the yoke of their burden and the staff on their shoulders. The rod of their oppressor is at the battle of Midian. So he's sharing here a prophecy about when the Messiah comes, he's going to bring light to people that walk in darkness. He's going to bring freedom to the oppressor, or to those that are oppressed. He's going to give them deliverance from their oppressors. And, we see this, once again, the beginning of the prophecies, or more of the prophecies about this coming kingdom. And what we don't understand here, which Isaiah will actually get into it and elaborate on it, it's not just the establishment of that physical kingdom. This Messiah is actually going to come and bring release and peace and freedom from the oppression that comes within a person. And so in chapter 9 here, we see one more just really specific prophecy. Verse 6, "For a child will be born to us, a son will be given to us, and the government will rest on his shoulders, and his name will be called Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Eternal Father, Prince of Peace. There will be no end to the increase of his government or of peace on the throne of David and over his kingdom, to establish it and to uphold it with justice and righteousness from then on and forevermore. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will accomplish this." So here's what we see is this, once again, incredible prophecy about the kingdom. Here's a revelation, though, of a little bit clearer of how this is going to come. He said, a child will be born. A son will come to us, and the government will be on his shoulders. It says, here's one that's going to grow up. And in fact, we'll see that in just a couple chapters later. Here's one that's going to grow up from a son to child. And actually, he's going to be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Eternal Father, Prince of Peace. There's going to be no end to his government, to the increase of his government. And on the throne of David, he will sit and establish his kingdom. And he'll establish it in justice and righteousness. And it's going to be from then on and forevermore. It's an eternal kingdom. And so this was the hope, the prophetic hope established here. He said, how is this going to happen? The zeal of the Lord of hosts will accomplish this.